5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I farted.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the 143rd episode of Ranknreview, where my returning guest Skye Brandon, yay! Skye Brandon and I are going to discuss westerns, which again is not your typical subject for Ranknreview, but I think we have a pretty good discussion, and I think it's a pretty fantastic list of movies in a lot of ways. So you've got that to look forward to. Let me know, give me some feedback, what you feel about these episodes straying from the genres that I typically address. Let me know if you agree with our ranks, and just say hello at ranknreview@gmail.com. That's RANKNREVIEW@gmail.com. Check out the website at ranknreview.ca. And go into this discussion on westerns, knowing as usual that it's going to have some coarse language and it's going to have some spoilers. Thank you so much for listening to Ranknreview. Please tell that other movie freak in your life about the show, and let's enjoy some western action. Oh, Skye Brandon. Oh, Skye, thank you so much for being here. I know you're a very, very, very busy man.
This one was a long one in the making.
But I think it's going to be worth it. I'm always stoked when, I know we got a good guest, and I know we got an interesting subject. Because this is the first time that we've dedicated an episode to westerns.
Really? I'm honored.
It's a little bit off-grid for me because, I tend to focus on genre movies, horror, science fiction, fantasy. That's like 90% of what I do.
Yeah.
But every now and then I like to stray off of it. And I do really appreciate the Western genre because it was force-fed me by my father. My dad loved the old dusters, so growing up I didn't have an option of what was on the one TV we had in the house on Saturday afternoon. So if we were watching, High Noon, we were watching High Noon. If we were watching some John Wayne or old school, Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns, that's what was on. And I got into some of them. I didn't get into all of them, but I remember at the time I was like, I should be watching the Transformers or something, an animated series. He was eating up my TV time.
That bastard.
But at the time I resented them, but I kind of grown to appreciate them. Because there was a popular surge in westerns in the 60s and 70s that sort of died out pretty abruptly with the 80s. I think was it the Cimino film that shut everything down? What was the famous disaster piece with Chris Christopherson?
Oh, heck.
Christopher Walken. I can't.
I know exactly. I know what you're talking about. But that is interesting because I hadn't really thought about it because being born in the second half of the 70s, not really watching TV until the 80s, really. It's like, I just kind of knew westerns because of Clint Eastwood, and it's because those are the kind of movies he did before he was Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of associated it, and it wasn't until, late 80s with probably one we're going to talk about, Young Guns, that made me really kind of go, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
They're still making these.
My dad took me to see an old Lawrence Kasdan movie called Silverado.
Yep. I found it later. Tim Hildebrand, our mutual friend, introduced that one to me later. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I remember at the time being kind of disappointed that I was kind of being dragged to a Western. It was clearly Dad's choice that night, but I really, really liked it.
Yeah.
I really liked it. But what I like about the modern Westerns when they do crop up is they're pretty edgy. I do think that there would be much more crossover with the horror fan genre to the Western genre than you would realize. And in fact, there's been a couple of really great horror Westerns that have come out in the last few years.
Right.
If you haven't seen Brimstone or Bone Tomahawk...
I have not.
These are two of like the darkest horror movies I've seen in a while, and they're both Westerns. And like I do recommend them, but like you might need to watch an episode of The Simpsons or something to cleanse the palate afterwards. They are dark movies, but interesting. But you know, the law is, there's usually a crooked angle to the law. The hero, there's usually a crooked angle to the hero.
Yes.
The morals of the movies to swing wide. And especially in this crop of movies.
Yes, I agree.
It's as old as time. The same thing that you'll see in cop dramas, like how the heat idea, right?
Yes.
The cop and the criminal are two sides of the same coin. It's like... It's almost, you'd feel like it is an exhausted thing, but there's something about the Western aesthetic and the sort of moral latitude that these stories are allowed that, like the horror genre, you can't always count on the outcome that you expect or want.
Right.
And that gives the movies a little bit more energy and a little bit more stakes.
Yeah, I agree. Or you might get what you thought was going to happen, but not quite in the way. Like, there's like, oh, I thought that's might how it ended, but this wasn't expecting this person to drop off on the journey. Yeah, a couple of them I kind of wrote down to myself and making little notes. Like, it's almost like the anti-Western in terms of what you kind of picture they used to be in terms of the good guys and the bad guys, and then we do that, and it's like, and these ones are all pretty darn good examples of that. It's the, almost undercuts the heroic nature of the main characters, whether they're law or not.
Yeah. I also like the timeless nature of the Western genre. Like, you can make a Western in 1988, like Young Guns, and it's still... I mean, you can tell by the cast in certain aspects of the movie when it's made, but it's a Western, right?
Yes.
They're almost timeless movies. You can always make a Western, and it'll always age reasonably well. You know?
Yeah, that was something about... I guess I don't want to give away too much stuff before we talk about each one individually, but yeah, there was a definite line for me between Young Guns and Unforgiven, and then Tombstone up.
Right.
Like, Tombstone only came out a couple years after Unforgiven, like 3 years later. But it clearly, and maybe it's because I watched it in Blu-ray. Maybe it was the format. But I'm like, this clearly looks like this could have been made very recently.
Right.
Where Unforgiven did feel dated to me.
It had the grain in it a little bit more.
Yeah, and it was even more things about just like the way like the title screens popped up and like ins and outs, and of course Young Guns being late 80s, it's like the music just
the score.
Oh my god,
the score really announces itself in Young Guns, but the visual aesthetic is still classic Western motif and like hard to miss. But we'll get there. You're right. You actually chose this list. I just went off why I'm happy that you chose it, but what drew you to it?
Well, this is the third time now I've had the good fortune of sitting down and talking movies with you, and each time, like, in large part because I don't see films as often as I used to. There's always a couple of movies on the list when you go, hey, what about these lists? I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that yet.
Right.
So I actually still hadn't seen this True Grit, and I hadn't seen Django.
Oh, wow.
So
Treats.
I'm like, yeah.
Treats.
Exactly. So I'm like, let's pick that list, because at least I know there's a couple of movies in there that I haven't seen, and the other ones were all ones that I did enjoy. So I thought it would be kind of a neat list to wade back into.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And this, like you say, the list does include the Coen brothers and some Quentin Tarantino. So that's pretty good, cineast bait. Well, I'm ready to dive in. Is there anything else you want to say by way of introduction?
No, let's do it.
Okay, well, the 6 Westerns that Skye and I are going to talk, all fairly modern, I guess, compared to the golden age of the Westerns with the 60s and 70s. None of these take place in the golden age of the Western. In true Ranknreview fashion, these are all Westerns that are sort of made within my lifetime.
Yes.
Again, 95% of what I review on the show are movies that are after 1976, because nothing really important happened before I got here, Scott.
Exactly.
We're going to talk about Django Unchained. We're going to talk about the Coen brothers' interpretation of True Grit. We're going to talk about the James Mangold remake of 3:10 to Yuma, although I've not seen the original.
No, nor have I.
That won't be able to...
we won't be able to reference that in our...
Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer doing the Tombstone, some classic 90s Western. The movie that really convinced the world of the true filmmaking prowess of Clint Eastwood. Everybody was on board as Clint Eastwood, badass Hollywood star. Everyone was on board for that. Unforgiven, now anytime he makes a movie, it's Oscar bait, right?
Because of that movie.
Because of Unforgiven.
Yeah.
And then we're going to watch the Brat Pack play cowboys with young guns. Long-time listeners of the podcast may remember I have a real problem with Emilio Estevez.
Good to know. Thank you for the heads up.
We'll see if we can make it through that review. Thank you so much again for being here, brother.
If I were you, I'd take that winter coat.
You kill people, and they give you a reward?
Better they are, bigger the reward. I'm looking for the Brittle brothers.
I know what they look like, all right.
They sold my wife, but I don't know the who. You help me do that? I'll give you your freedom and take you to rescue your wife.
Where are we going?
Bullseye.
Come on, no. We got a fight going on that's a good bit of fun.
Coco, give me some sugar.
So you really free?
Yes.
You mean you want to dress like that?
What kind of dentist are you? Touch your guns, you die.
Yes! Woo!
I like the way you die, boy.
Gentlemen, you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
What's your name? Django. The D is silent.
So the current Ranknreview champion, Mr. Lee Beckman, and I are going to be tackling blaxploitation in the near future. We're going to talk about the Shaft trilogy, Cleopatra Jones, Superfly, and Blackula, of course. I almost forgot Blackula.
Can't.
And it's interesting because I didn't react as positively to all of those movies as I thought I would, and I felt a little bit of, I guess, white guilt about it. And when Django Unchained was coming out, I was a little bit resistant to it because I know that as much as I enjoy Tarantino, he can be pretty tactless about rubbing uncomfortable issues in your face, and I guess it does make me uncomfortable. And the thing that surprises me every time I watch Django is, considering the unbelievably harsh subject matter, I find myself laughing my way through Django Unchained. It could almost qualify as comedic at some points. Like, the overwhelming reaction, it's more interested in entertaining you than it is in rubbing your nose in anything ugly or teaching you some historical Western, some lesson about history. And that's the thing. It's like, well, so are we tackling slavery then? Can you tactfully, handle such a harsh subject with such an over-the-top Tarantino aesthetic and not really, without really rubbing our noses in it? I mean, is he successful at that, I guess, is the question that I would open to it. I think that he is, but I don't know quite how it's pulled off.
I think it's the cast.
Yeah?
I think it's his cast. I think, with other people in some of those roles, I don't know if it would be as successful. I'm completely speculating, but
you're Tarantino. You can get who you want, pretty much, right?
Yeah, and of course, with the exception of I guess Jamie Foxx and DiCaprio, I think this might have been the first time he worked with both of them. But in terms of Samuel L. Jackson and Christoph Waltz, he'd worked with them, obviously, to great success. Christoph Waltz, I think, is kind of a linchpin in terms of that. He
is one of those actors that if you can get Christoph Waltz in your movie, you should probably have him in your movie. Like, it's going to elevate the proceedings. Everybody else is going to have to scramble to match him.
And after I just came up, it popped up, and I was doing some other checking out some interviews, probably because Sam Jackson's obviously around a lot right now with a bunch of Marvel movies, big releases coming up, and I came across him talking in a slightly older interview about Django Unchained.
Right.
And how he's like, oh, it was worse. Like, his character was worse in the first draft, and a lot of stuff they ultimately decided to cut and take out.
But in the background, there was more evils going on.
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't decide because for me, the first half of the movie almost doesn't feel like Django is the main character to me. It sort of feels like the Christoph Waltz character, Schultz.
Yeah,
Dr.
the
King
dentist.
Schultz.
The ex-dentist.
Posing as a dentist more than anything else.
Yeah.
In a way, it's his movie until like almost the halfway point, and then the movie kind of shifts gears and it becomes Django's movie. And maybe because, again, white guilt speaking possibly, but maybe because we access the story through him, he's a white person who is not despicable, who we can be okay with, resting our story on to introduce us into this terrible world.
Yeah.
And like we wish that the rest of the people were as intellectual and as
But even like
comparatively,
yes, it's good that you added that, because even like the good guy, our dentist, Mr. Schultz, he still has that line early on. It's like, I really don't like slavery, but I am going to use it to my advantage,
just for the time
being, because I own you now.
Yeah.
But I'll let you
I'm
go
asking
free.
you, but I'm not really asking you. But he's having the conversation with Django, which is more than Django's ever gotten.
Yes,
before.
that's true.
And I don't want to say that he soft shoes the treatment of the African American characters, because he doesn't.
No,
but the movie is way more fun than I expected it to be.
And for me too, like I said, the cast was part of it for me. And like any Tarantino film, he's so good with music and throwing you curveballs. Like how that music seemed to fit in this moment. It's a contemporary hip hop hook, but it did.
Yeah,
it makes me go, oh yeah, this is awesome.
And again, you have to pick the right track. More Than a Feeling wasn't going to find its way anywhere under the soundtrack. You couldn't just make anything work. And I think Tarantino's always been a big appreciator of that. The right piece of music with the right piece of imagery will make your whole movie. It will make your whole movie. If you can just burn that into the consciousness of the public, then they will sing your praises forever. Quentin Tarantino, I think even if he retires on a terrible film the way Kubrick did, his legacy is fairly secure at this point.
I agree.
His worst film is probably still going to be more interesting than a lot of people's best films. I don't always agree with Tarantino, but I'm almost always entertained by Tarantino. He's a pretty safe bet when you put your money down at the box office, I find. So, yeah. Do you think it's a problem that Django? Do you agree that Django's not quite the main character?
I didn't have that same feeling, but now that you mention it, I totally see how you would feel that way. But it didn't occur to me watching it. And I actually watched it twice because we came up with this list quite quickly after the last episode, and I watched the first three right away, and then was like out of province doing a show, and life got like, God, now I got to rewatch them. Yeah, the first few.
I get it. Life gets in the way. I understand, brother. I'm so happy you're here.
So even rewatching, I'm like, oh, okay. Some of the things I thought maybe kind of bugged me the first watch. I'm like, no, this isn't bugging me.
No, a lot of the stuff. It's true. Every time I've watched it, I've liked it a little bit more. I think. Again, the problematic passages to me are there are some scenes that I feel like the dialogue goes on for a little bit too long, and that's very much Tarantino. And again, I will forgive him that for all of the little touches. I noticed James Remar played two parts in the movie. In the very beginning, he's with the group of cowboys, and Schultz blows his head off. He's the first guy who dies.
Right.
And he's also one of the head bodyguards of DiCaprio, who in turn ends up killing Schultz. Spoilers.
Right.
And it was just that was a little touch that I hadn't noticed before.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't flag it.
He has double cast in his movies before, but he's usually really cautious about it not sticking out. Right? But I thought that was kind of an interesting little sort of there if you want to notice it kind of detail that you can sort of depend on Tarantino.
Yeah, no, I didn't catch that either time I watched it.
I do really like Jamie Foxx in the lead. He's quite stoic again for the first half. He's sort of in the Neo role of from the Matrix.
Yeah.
Where he's basically taking in information, and a lot of these powers are being given to him.
Right.
But it's just kind of weird and strangely comic how small the powers seem to be, how blown away the public are by seeing a black man
on a horse,
riding a horse.
Yeah.
People stopping, mouths just gaping. Oh my God, what world are we in? What's happening?
And then there's some things too. I'm like, what is that story about? And not that you have time to do it, but like DiCaprio's character Candy, like him and his sister.
What's going on?
It's like, what is going on? And but that's not the main plot. But there's just things like, man, there's something weird going on there. I think Tarantino just lets it hang.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and DiCaprio too. This sort of really sort of deep-seated soul rot of a person. You know, he's been so rich and so powerful his entire life that nothing means anything to him anymore. He doesn't seem to really enjoy anything particularly. Yeah. And plus the isolation of this plantation, you know, will allow all of this eccentricity to just bubble and bubble and bubble and turn him into this just completely atrocious subhuman being, right?
Yeah.
And it takes, like, I think that some lesser actors would have been trying to find a reason for the evil, and I think that DiCaprio just kind of strangely embraced it. He understood the role he was to play here. He was the fucking bad guy.
Yeah. And there's a couple of things I remember coming across about that too, like the moment when he cut his hand on the table, that was complete accident.
Yeah, and he kept going.
Yeah, just turned around and asked for a towel and just kind of kept it. And then, well, I guess now his hand's got to be wrapped for the last.
He actually must have. Did he smear real blood on Kerry Washington's face, or was that a cutaway? That maybe they.
I think they would add that one after,
because that would be kind of disturbing.
That would be extremely disturbing.
But yeah, originally him cutting his hand was an accident. It was a discovery on set.
Use it,
shall we say?
Yeah.
I do have some bad things to say though. The main one for me is again this terrible instinct that Tarantino has of inserting himself into his movies.
Right.
It's not even that I think he's a terrible actor, but that he's able to cast his movies so amazingly, then he ends up an amateur actor working with gods, right? Like he's being wiped off the screen. Even if he was doing his best work, he's probably just going to get blown off the screen. So that sucks. And he
heaped on by doing.
He attempts an Australian accent, and he hires a bunch of Australian actors. One of them, memorably, was the main baddie from a horror movie called Wolf Creek. He kills a bunch of backpackers in this really, really ugly Australian slasher movie. Anyway, everybody on set was polite enough not to mention how terrible the accent was, but I have to say it, and I there's some ego to it, like. It's like putting yourself in the seat of saying, I'm Alfred Hitchcock, right?
Right.
Shyamalan does this too.
Yeah.
Whenever I see him show up in his movie, my shoulders just drop a little bit.
Well, that's where he decided to put himself. Eh?
Here we go, right?
Yeah.
And it was distracting. Like, there's a lot of over-the-top moments. The gunplay and the violence in the movie is almost like anime level, like over-the-top.
Especially the last sequence, yeah.
And like that aesthetic choice, which is not at all realistic, didn't bother me. It didn't take me out of the movie. But suddenly seeing Quentin Tarantino giving a terrible performance with this terrible accent really did momentarily knock me out of it. Oh, right, this is a Tarantino joint. I'm watching a movie. I was less in it while he was on screen.
And part of it, too, like, it happens so much later in the film, too, that it, for me... And especially watching it the first time, like, oh yeah, right. Like, I forgot that he was probably going to pop up at some point.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like, oh shoot.
It's also a rare slow moment in the movie where you want the movie to be getting to, you know, Django get some payback, right?
Yeah.
It was time. So I don't know what all of the scenes that got cut from the movie. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we won't. But this feels like, at the very least, it could have been cut in half as far as the length with the Australian slavers.
Yeah, and just.
And
the dynamite.
It would not have hurt the movie. It would not have hurt the movie at all. But largely, I'm really pleasantly surprised by the movie. And like I said, the dark humor in it. They're not really Klansmen, because the Klan, as we understand it, didn't exist at the time that this movie was being made.
Yeah, it was like 1858, pre-Civil War.
But the hoods with the eye holes in them definitely sort of bespeak what this sort of poison atmosphere was going to grow. and the fact that we laugh at them and how pathetic and sad that they
Yeah.
all are, and weirdly human at the same time. But
Well, yeah, turning around the moment. Well, fine. Then if you're not going to be happy, my wife did all
going
this
home.
extra work. I'm taking my hoods and I'm going home.
by the way, that
Oh.
saved that man's life.
Yeah.
So, but it's strangely humanizing them. And again, I recently talked about Blazing Saddles on the podcast, and there's that amazing Gene Wilder line where he talks about these are the people, the hard-worn, pure people that broke the soil and built America. You know, morons. And yeah, I mean, but it's not in a way it's like Whitey's bad or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's just like they're almost helpless to their environment. These guys, they're yokels. They're hill folk practically, and they have this pretend dignity of being ruled over by Mr. Miami Vice himself,
Mr. Don Johnson.
Right?
What a resurgence he's had over the years. He's watching a series of unfortunate events with my family and stuff like that. There's Don Johnson.
He's in that. I didn't know. My
Yeah.
boys love that show.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it all, but my
Yeah.
boys are all over it. So yeah, I heap a lot of praise on Django Unchained. And again, it's another case of Tarantino taking a bunch of ingredients that probably shouldn't work, that might even be, offensive, and turning it into something terribly entertaining.
Yeah, and I think you could probably put that movie on if someone didn't know who wrote and directed it. If they had previous knowledge of his canon, you'd put that on. I was like, is this Tarantino? Like, it's so unmistakably.
But it is, the way it sprawls, the way the dialogue unfolds, the soundtrack choices. If you've seen Tarantino, I think you will see his fingerprints all over this.
Yep.
But I'm largely in favor. Is there anything else you want to say about Django?
Oh, I'm just taking a quick look at my notes. Like, yeah, there wasn't too much. Like, some of the music cuts were jarring, but overall, I still liked the majority of them. And like the last sequence where the house blows up, that was the only time where I kind of went like,
Wow, that's pretty good.
And Kerry Washington has that kind of look back at him as he's walking up. It just kind of felt like a little too cherry on top, but that's getting really picky.
And DiCaprio's great in the movie, but I do think that there's two other villains, especially Sam Jackson's Steven.
Yes.
Like one of the most corrupted characters in any movie I can think of. Like completely to his soul corrupted.
Yeah. And so interesting to watch him play that part, though, in terms of how he acts around everybody else.
Yeah.
In that one scene when it's just the two of them,
Yeah.
he's completely different.
He's an actor playing an actor in this role because he's playing the part that he knows everybody wants him to play as perfectly as he can so that he can have the most comfortable life he can possibly live in this poisonous environment while, he'll participate in the torment of the other, slaves without any problem with it. And I love the detail at the end when he asks Steven to come out. When he actually drops his cane. He doesn't even have a fucking limp.
Yeah.
It's all an act. His whole life is an act. He's like a Shakespearean level villain, right? And I like in a smaller role, he uses Walton Goggins again in The Hateful Eight.
Right.
But I like how hateable Walton Goggins is able to make this guy with minimal screen time. He gets shot in the dick and you don't care.
No, thank goodness.
Really good adversaries for Django, and I think that because they're so big and over the top, they need big over the top deaths, and the hyper violence of the finale kind of feeds into that.
Yeah.
But I don't know what these bullets are made of, but they seem to enter you, swell like eggs, and explode. Have a watch, and it might press some buttons, but I think it's more entertaining than provocative in a lot of ways, which is not what I was expecting.
You got a lot of experience with bounty hunters, do you?
That is a silly question. I am 14.
You can run on for a long time.
Time for you to go home.
I don't like you.
I will not go back, not without Cheney, dead or alive.
Sooner or later, gotta cut you down.
Cheney's here! Help me, Marshal!
Now what, Cogburn?
Them boys don't think about the wrath that's about to set down on it. Cheney and his gang are a rough lot.
I do not regret shooting your father.
I will kill this girl!
Biggest mistake you ever made.
Tell them that God's gonna cut you down.
help me?
I can do nothing for you, son.
All right, the Coen brothers take on True Grit. I have one complaint.
And it is?
There's a couple of scenes where I think I almost need the subtitles on to actually understand some of the words that are coming out of Jeff Bridges' mouth. I love me the dude. I love me Jeff Bridges. I will watch him in any movie, anything, anytime. But the level of slur and level of drunkenness at times, I actually I'm not even sure if I got all of that dialogue.
Well, it's interesting you bring it up too, right? Because like good way through, Matt Damon's tongue gets almost cut in half, and then Josh Brolin's character gets kind of a speech impediment as well. And then you've got her, this 14-year-old who's like, I wrote Anna Green Gables in a revenge western, like just whipping out Coen dialogue like nobody's business.
Like, again, much like we talked about with Django, I think you could watch this movie not knowing it was the Coen brothers, but about 5 or 10 minutes in, you'd be like, oh shit, this is the Coen brothers, right?
yeah, totally.
If you like the Coen brothers, this is going to work for you. I mean, end of review, basically.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting about it is this is not so much, in a way, a remake of the famous John Wayne Western, as it is a proper adaptation of the novel that John Wayne Western was based on.
Right.
So it's almost a misnomer to call it a remake in that respect.
Right. I think it's a new adaptation of the source material.
It's a much more interested in the character of Haley Steinfeld. I'm going to get her name here, sorry.
I think you got it right.
No, that's the actress.
Oh, I said the character.
Maddie Ross is the character she's playing. She's really the protagonist of this story. And if you watch the John Wayne movie, John Wayne is the protagonist of the story because he's John Wayne. But she is tough as nails, this little kid. She's like tougher than almost everybody in her environment in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's like Mother Nature herself that takes Haley down. It's not anybody's, brutality or strength. Like, she has a real beef with Josh Brolin because he went ahead and killed her pa.
That's right.
And she's supposed to be running a financial errand on the farm, but her real motivation is to kill the man or see the man killed who did this to her father.
She wants justice to be done and the man who killed her dad to pay, however that means. To the point where, with Matt Damon, his coming from outside the state, it's like, no, you don't get to take him to your state. I don't care what he did there either. He's paying for what he did here right now.
Yeah. And again, the whole amazing cast, wall to wall, as you would expect. But I have to say, this is one of my favorite things I've seen Matt Damon do. I love Matt Damon in this. I love how it's the anti-Jason Bourne character. Like, he's got like a terrible cowlick, and he's got this macho bravado that he's not really completely earned. And there's something kind of embarrassing about Le Beef.
Being taken to task by a 14-year-old.
And the humiliation that he's constantly outsmarted and outtalked by this child. Right?
Yeah. Like I wrote down too, Barry Pepper, and I hadn't seen him in a while. And
great Canadian actor, killing it as like a scumbag.
And I double checked because again, this was one of the other ones I hadn't seen before. I'm like, is that Gleason's kid? And it is. It's Donald Gleason before he started getting some of the.
Very kind of a one-scene role, but a memorable one.
Really great scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, left and right throughout the movie. And again, the details of the West that I just love. Like, there's no don'ts or ain'ts or aren'ts. They do not, are not.
Yeah.
They, like, very specific in the choices of the dialogue. The strange Western imagery. When they see the guy riding in wearing the bear fur. But from a distance, it looks like there's a bear
coming on a horse.
And you're like, did they just completely flip the switch on this whole movie? What's happening right now? The weird hanged man that they find absurdly.
Yeah, I wrote down, like, that's a high. That's high. They've hung that guy high.
And the characters acknowledge it. Like, she says when she's climbing up to cut the rope, why did they hang him so high? And he says, I do not know. I do not know. Him spreading the rope around the campfire because he believes this fairy tale that's going to keep snakes away. Just the small details of the movie, like you always expect with the Coen brothers, are so rich.
Well, that's good because then you're already planting the seeds for the stuff with the snake bite that happens at the end of the movie without making it a big deal. You've introduced it,
and it's the first time she seems bothered by an idea that she's bringing up. She's been a tough cookie, but when she mentions snakes, her eyes kind of shift. She doesn't like that.
Yeah. Not while you're sleeping.
She can't out-talk a snake.
Yeah.
She's pretty confident she can talk her way out of any situation, and she might actually be right. I love True Grit, and I mean, I think it would be a really great entry point for people who weren't into a lot of westerns. I don't know that this is like your typical western.
I agree,
but it's a really good sort of walk you into this world, sort of the weird formality of it. They've revisited it kind of with their most recent one, the Legend of Buster Scruggs.
I haven't seen it.
It's just on Netflix right now, but it's like a bunch of Western vignettes. There's like 6 short Western films. Some of them seem like they could be plucked directly out of this universe.
Right.
Like, there's something so tactile and specific about the Coen brothers that you just recognize it right away.
Well, yeah, even the dialogue, to be honest, too, for me, it struck me more as being Coen brother dialogue as a Western genre dialogue per se. There's sometimes I'm like, that's a Coen brothers line. That's not like I'm gonna pluck this out of like a Western vernacular.
Yeah. No, that was a specific choice.
Yeah.
Just the way we're shown Maddie's edge, like when she finds out that this Buster Cogburn character has like the most ruthless reputation, that's the guy she wants.
Yeah.
I also want to give some shout outs to Josh Brolin playing the really strange and broken Tom Chaney. Like, this guy, I don't know what's going on. It's one of those still waters run deep type of characters.
Yeah.
But there is something really off and really dangerous about him. And it's accomplished really minimally, but there's something off-putting about it. I really liked him.
Even, like, when you first see him on screen, when she happens to cross him in the river, it's not like he has this first reaction of like, oh God, there's the daughter of the man I killed. He's like, oh hey, you're the kid from... It's just this weird, I'm like, oh, that's not what I expected at all.
We are in the middle of nowhere. There is no earthly reason for you to be here.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, hi.
It's just or the way he pouts when he's being left behind. You know?
Yeah.
I do not like this plan. Please put me on your horse. I am not heavy. Like, I don't want to babysit this kid. And again, it's one of those things where it's not that big a role screen time wise, but he fills it. Same thing with Barry Pepper.
And especially both characters too, not just Josh Brolin, but they get talked about so much before you kind of you see them. Like Tom Stoppard's done that a few times in his plays, where he'll talk about characters for so long that by the time the person has to show up, it's like a lot of the work's been done for you, and you're like, that's the person who we've been waiting for. Yeah.
So, very minimal things to complain about. I haven't said a lot about Jeff the Dude Bridges. I mean, after The Big Lebowski, it was just hard for me not to associate Jeff Bridges with the dude. It's just like...
He kind of is like a Western dude.
He kind of is. Definitely much more bloodthirsty than the dude would ever be, I would like to think. But I do think he does have this... he walks the line where he still manages to be lovable. He is a belligerent drunk, and he is willing to say, oh, fuck this, and walk away from this girl at one point in the movie, and we should probably not forgive him for that, but we under sort of...
But by the time we get to the end, right, he absolutely... Not only does he end up helping make happen what she wants...
He saves her life.
He saves her life.
Yeah. Definitely very chilling, this imagery of a rattlesnake nested in the chest of a skeleton.
Yeah.
Really, really strange, strong. There's, I'm not fooled by the CGI, but the idea of it was strong enough that I was able to make it work for me.
Yeah.
And I understand that you're not going to have Haley Seinfeld work with an actual fucking rattlesnake.
No, not going to happen.
And it sort of bespeaks broader themes. You actually give more weight to the fact that she gets snake bit, like that means something, because it's the Coen brothers and the world is so big.
And you get a great payoff, for me anyways, it was a good payoff in that when you do see her then as an adult in the sequence, it's like, oh, it's not like, oh, and he saved her and that was it. It's like, no, she lost
her arm.
She lost her arm.
Yeah.
Saved her life, but she lost her arm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I love me True Grit.
Yeah, the only thing, I'm just trying to look at, I also wrote down not digging the rooster's voice. There was times where I was like,
what are you saying?
What are you saying?
There's a whole business where they're doing the I can shoot the bottle thing.
Yeah.
Where it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, they're shooting the cornbread up in the air too. And
I almost want to like see the actual script to see if like they actually wrote drunk speak. Like they instructed him to be indecipherable because like...
He's so drunk.
Yeah.
And then actually the last thing I wrote down was like, the credits pissed me off.
Really?
Yeah. But now, like looking at the note, I'm like, why did it piss me off? It couldn't have been that bad if I can't remember what it was about the credits that made me so angry.
Because you were sad the movie was over.
Maybe it's the way, I don't know. Maybe isn't it a long shot?
She's walking up the hill to this place where she's buried. She's got, I think her father's remains and Cogburn's remains are there, which are kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Maybe that's what it was. It just kind of seemed out of place with the whole, but.
Again, it's very Coen Brothers to have that little 5-10 minute sting at the end of the movie. Like, you feel everything's resolved, and then they give you this flash
almost
forward.
like an epilogue.
Yeah. Very much like an epilogue. I would guess it's taken directly from the novel. I don't know that, but I would guess it. Some people find that frustrating. A lot of the times, definitely with the most recent one, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, when that first credit comes up, written and directed by Joel and Ethan Coen, my mind goes, like I'm just like, what did I just watch? And like I need to usually watch them 2 or 3 times to sort of like piece them out. True Grit isn't as much like that. I think because the clarity of the story is there, I think you can really enjoy it and get behind it. I understand that there'll be a lot of people who are like, what was with that last 10 minutes? But I was still with it. I was still under its spell. And again, I'm a little bit biased. I don't think you're going to hear me talk shit about the Coen Brothers on this podcast. It hasn't really happened yet. So, good movie. Watch it if you haven't.
Yeah.
Good enough?
Good enough.
You're so sure that your crew's coming to get you?
They're lost without him, like a pack of dogs without a master.
Where'd they take him?
I don't know!
Let me out of here!
Sure as God's vengeance, they're coming.
Coming this way, I've seen him.
There's gotta be 30, 40 more guns out there now.
Monster, you in there?
Sorry, mister, but I'm not gonna die here today.
It's just you left, Dan. Just you and your boy.
This town's gonna burn!
Call him off.
Why should I?
Because you're not all bad.
Yes, I am. You just remember that your old man walked Ben Wade to that station when nobody else would.
So here's the thing. I really, really like this remake, 310 to Yuma. Like, we just finished talking about True Grit, which is also an amazing remake. But I gotta say, upon revisiting it, I don't know if I forgot about the depth of the movie.
Right.
I sort of thought of it as kind of like a fun shoot 'em up in a lot of ways, but it's way more bleak than that. It's way closer to Unforgiven than it is.
Yes, it's one of those. It's falling into that anti-Western end of the spectrum for me in terms of, you've got this heroic character, but he's not
heroic,
and he's even less heroic
as the movie progresses.
You get more and more details, and that's why I love that connection between Christian Bale and Russell Crowe.
I talked about in the introduction the moral vacuum that a lot of these Western movies take place in, and in a moral vacuum, it is a mistake to be all good. And as a consequence, anybody who is too altruistic in this movie is dead meat. And it's interesting. Like, I remember the end of the movie. Again, I'd forgotten this detail. I don't mean to jump right to the end, but Russell Crowe is on the train. So I guess, spoilers, he gets to the train, but he whistles and his horse starts chasing after him. And it's this great implication.
He's going to get out.
He's going to get out. He's always going to be able to find a way. He's going to escape.
And it's got that great bit of dialogue right near the end. He's like, just so you know, I've actually
escaped.
I've been in this prison they're sending me to before, and I've gotten out.
Yeah. So all of this is for naught in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But
the principle of getting them on that train. It's the principle. Like I said, I'm going to do it.
But that's his tragedy. Like that's his tragedy. He has to do the right thing. And in the end, as Russell Crowe presumably rides off into the sunset, not literally in the film's language, but should we be happy about this? Do we like Russell Crowe? Is he a hero?
I think we do like him, or at least parts of him, but whether or not, but I think we should be like, why do I like
this is almost No Country for Old Men territory upon revisiting it.
Yeah.
And in a way that is both sort of good and bad. Like, I do think it's acknowledged. I do think the movie is thoughtful about it. But in a way, it becomes a less fun movie for me all of a sudden.
Oh, really? Yeah, for me, I think that's why I like it as much as I do, is he has these moments of, he's a bad man. But he has these moments of kind of dipping toward, like he's being, what's the word I'm looking for, influenced by the good man that he's finding his company in. Yeah. And I remember seeing it in the movie theater when it first came out, and I liked it then, and I hadn't seen it until I rewatched it here a couple times for this. But again, spoilers, not jumping right to the end, but I absolutely do just love the moment where he turns around and just smokes his whole crew.
Yeah. But again, like, all of those years of loyalty, all of the hell that his crew have been through to try and rescue him, and successfully really rescue him at this point. And what's their payback?
Yeah, they're all dead.
They're all executed by the man they came to save, right?
Yeah.
There's no loyalty among thieves. Again, we see Russell Crowe doing the wrong thing again and again and again and being rewarded for it. We see Christian Bale and his dwindling member of friends and family get consistently punished for doing the right thing. There's a scene, by the way, shout out to Luke Wilson for playing a really grungy evil cowboy and disappearing into a role like I have literally never seen him do. Like, he seemed to really connect to something in that character. I think Luke Wilson has some darkness in him, but he's torturing him, the Russell Crowe character, with at the time a very modern implement of torture.
Yes.
Electrical cables. They're shocking him. And Alan Tudyk as the doc, and Christian Bale can't sit by and allow this to happen, so they put a stop to it. And as a result, Russell Crowe escapes. Alan Tudyk's shot in the back, right?
Yeah.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah.
And that's the message of the movie. Like, that theme repeats itself over and over.
And early, like, it was like, with Fonda, with Fonda's character too, it's like, he's the law, but then you start getting these little bits of dialogue, like, this is a terrible person, just so you know, like, he's doing this because he's getting paid to do this job, like that. That's the only reason he's here.
Yeah.
So your good guy, even some of your good guys are.
But again, Russell Crowe isn't even portrayed as that heroic. There's an amazing sequence where they're robbing the stagecoach. Peter Fonda's got a reinforced, very modern
Gatling
gun on it.
Yeah.
He's going to protect the score. And Russell Crowe has all of his men, like, ride into gunfire while he waits in the background and leads Christian Bale's herd onto the road to cause the cart to go off of the trajectory. And that's not the heroic wading into battle leader that you would think people would die for.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's always in the background. He always finds a way. And it's not even particularly heroic.
No, I think he finds a way to get his men paid.
Yeah.
And
one of his men's being
loyalty.
held hostage. Well, 12 of them aren't. So we're going to shoot the hostage.
Right.
And that seems to be an understood thing by all of the henchmen. But again, why is he so worshipped? Because he's able to thrive and survive in this environment. When we meet Christian Bale's character, and I'm sorry, I will let you get a word in edgewise, Skye. He's dead broke. His cattle have gone astray, and
drought.
And he's doing miserably because he's doing everything right. And when we meet Russell Crowe, he's rich and fashionable and cool, and he's doing everything wrong.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Your heart goes out to the Christian Bale character, but like, I kind of. Well, obviously, it was my second time seeing it, so I knew where the movie was going. It was going to be a tragic trajectory for that character. But it seemed so preordained watching it the second time, whereas the first time I was kind of surprised.
By how it ends, yes.
But this time it feels like the movie's screaming it at me almost.
Right, that's interesting, yeah. I do remember watching it in the movie theater and being surprised at the end.
Yeah.
Going, oh crap. Like he didn't make it. Not that I thought he was going to get out of there with his shirt clean by any stretch.
There was going to be a price to pay, for sure.
And
I thought it was going to cost him his son, honestly. I thought that, like...
Oh, God, I don't think I can handle that.
Right?
If that happened.
But, like, you felt some sort of tragedy coming, but maybe because it was Christian Bale at the height of his... He was still Batman at this time, I think.
He did it right after the first Batman, I think, before the second one.
Yeah. So he couldn't have been a bigger star at the time, and he's not playing the hero role that we expect him to play.
Which is probably why he sought it out. He's traditionally been very good at doing that, undercutting himself in terms of, I get perceived as this, so now I'm going to go do the fighter.
Yeah. Because to me, he was doing all of this to prove his son that he had some honor, he had some worth. Since he was failing at keeping the farm, and he was failing with paying off his debt, and he was failing in front of his son left and right, he could at least prove to his son that his essential theory about the world is to do right, is correct, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to do right. And it kills him. It literally kills him.
Yeah, and I think, too, like, the ending, why it resonates so much for me is that, again, you do get that last shot of like, he's probably going to get out of here anyways. But I think maybe that's ultimately why we do like Russell Crowe's character, despite his terrible nature, is that he could have just walked away right there. But he's like, no, I'm going to get on the train to ensure that this man's family technically gets what was promised to them.
His son will at least think that this is the fate.
Yeah, there's that part too, and there's the promise that's been made to the company.
But keeping that promise was worth executing all of his loyal men for that. Keeping that promise, right? And Ben Foster, who we haven't talked about.
He's great.
He is really good in the movie. Like, you hate his fucking guts. His indifference to life and death is... He doesn't say it. He doesn't have that monologue where he talks about his father beat him or anything like that.
Right.
But, like, he just does not value life at all.
Well, and just from a design, technical standpoint, it's like, it is one of the most iconic looking characters in a Western I've ever seen. Like, when you say 3:10 to Yuma, or even say Ben Foster, the first thing that pops into my head is not him as Angel in X-Men.
Right.
I think of him in that fucking white double-breasted coat and that awesome wide brim hat. Like, it is... Yeah, it was well executed.
And I like this thing, like, he's amazingly quick with his hands. He can kill somebody with one shot, and he knows when he pulls the trigger that it's a kill shot, but he doesn't revel in it. He's not, like, looking the guy in the eye. He's not saying something terrible to him before he does it. He just does
his job.
He doesn't give a shit. He just doesn't give a shit. The only time he gives a shit is when he's been shot himself, and he's looking Russell Crowe in the eye. And there's something... like devastatingly personal about that execution,
which I totally understand.
Right?
Like, I've done all this for you, and now how this?
Why? Yeah. Why are you killing me? Why have you killed me? Yeah. And he gets no answers, right? But again, in his world, like, he was doing everything wrong, which was how you survived.
Yeah.
Right? This is not how it was supposed to end, right?
Yeah.
Charlie Prince doesn't end up with a bullet in it. Charlie Prince puts a bullet in you.
Yeah. That's the thing I wrote down, similar to True Grit, right? And as opposed to, I'd be curious because I haven't read it, but it's actually an Elmore Leonard short story. Mm-hmm. So I wonder how much more is it so much not a remake of a movie that came before, but how much has it gone back to the story?
Again, I haven't seen the original. I have seen the original True Grit, but to be honest, it was probably the late 80s when I saw it. I was a kid.
Yeah.
So, in both cases, I'm not going to... they can't be spoiled by ruining the original for me because I haven't seen it. So
yeah, the only thing I wrote down, too, is a great scene between Evans and Alice. I guess that's him and his wife. Mm-hmm. Gretchen Mol. I quite like her and everything I've seen her in. Not that I've seen her entire oeuvre. Yes. I haven't seen the whole canon, but like whenever I come across her, I'm like, I always like her.
That's another interesting thing. The reason Russell Crowe is initially caught is because of a woman, right? He decides to linger. He's so casual and confident about his ability to escape that even though the rest of the boys have split to the wind with their cash.
Well, I think now talking about it too, like I think maybe that's his first curveball, right? Is he underestimates Evans, Christian Bale's character.
Yeah.
He's like, I was not expecting like this man to walk into the tavern just thinking, he wants some kind of compensation for his cattle, but now he's actually orchestrated me being caught, whether that was his plan coming in or not.
$200 reward, by the way, would change Christian Bale's farm, his life, probably for the next decade, right? He would be... $200 is not a small... especially for like a dirt poor farmer.
Yeah.
That is motivation.
And what I like about that sequence too is there's so many things that are stacked against that character. It's not that he's bad at what he does. Like, there's a large landowner that's fucking him over by diverting water from the river further upstream in order to push him off because they want the railroad to come through. And then there's
gangster tactics.
Exactly, burning his barn to the ground. Like, that's how the whole movie starts. Is like this epic barn burning sequence. It's like things are bad and he's getting picked on.
Yeah. But again, there's something to me so psychologically awful about the movie's thesis that you can't be altruistic, you can't do the right thing. That is naive.
Right.
You are destined to fail. Again, it's the opposite of the traditional Western heroic ideal anyway.
Yep.
Just because the hero doesn't always win doesn't mean that the hero isn't always right. And this movie kind of posits that the heroes, sometimes you have to cheat to win. If you want to live to go to the next day, and I don't know I don't know how well that sits, but it makes the movie much deeper than just another Western shootout.
Yeah, totally agree.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Shot your brother.
Now the time has come for justice.
Guess maybe you better swear me in.
And he has to live up to his reputation.
You got a fight coming.
I'll be there!
One last time.
None of your problem, Doc. You don't have to mix up in this.
That is a hell of a thing for you to say to me.
In a battle.
The last charge of Wyatt Earp and his immortals.
At the OK Corral.
Oh, my God.
The West would never forget. Kurt Russell. Val Kilmer. Dana Delaney. Powers Booth. Michael Biehn. Bill Paxton, Jason Priestley, Sam Elliott, and Charlton Heston.
You tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me!
Justice is coming to Tombstone.
So I'm going to confess to a crime, Skye, here officially on Ranknreview.
Okay.
It was around Christmas time, as my memory says it, in 1993. I went to a screening of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. And as I was walking out of the theater...
Oh, I think I know what you might have done.
I decided to just walk into the
next theater
that was being let in without buying a ticket. So I got to see Tombstone for the first time on the big screen.
For free.
Because I was like, I don't know, 15 or 16-year-old, something like that. I don't know. I was being a brat. I got away with it, and now I've confessed. So,
do you feel better?
The good people at Capitol Cinemas in Saskatoon, which no longer exists. Yeah. I'm sorry, I owe you $8.50. But it made an amazing movie, extra delicious, that I got it under those false pretenses. And, I saved a little bit of money on I guess, Ace Ventura.
I remember the first time I came across Tombstone was actually during my first year at the university. So it had been out a few years by that point. And a bunch of us that lived in Lav, one of the residence halls, we would go to I can't remember what it was called, but anyway, the video store up in Spruce Grove, and you get 7 movies for 7 days for $7 or whatever it was. And one of the 7, we got one of the guys on our floor was like, "Oh, Tombstone's great."
For sure, safe bet.
Yeah, it's like, all right, and we're watching yeah, I get it. I get why this movie is enjoyable, especially at that time and at that age. Like, this is amazing.
So Tombstone it stars half of Hollywood in 1993. If you weren't already a celebrity, you were about to pop really big as a celebrity. Some of the celebrities that are huge at the time mean nothing now, and some of the celebrities that were nothing at the time are huge now. Like, Jason Priestley was a huge star because of 90210.
I know, and he's got this small part in it, but...
Nobody gives a shit about Jason Priestley anymore, right? what's his name?
Billy Zane pre-Titanic.
Billy Bob Thornton has a one-scene role in this movie.
And it was right before he blew up with Sling Blade.
Right? Yeah. But like at the time, he was just another character actor that they hired in the movie.
Thomas Hayden Church is one of the cowboys, and then give him a few years, and all of a sudden he's being nominated for Academy Awards and popping up in Spider-Man 3.
So you're going to be spending the whole movie going, wow, that guy, wow, that guy, wow, that guy. And it's really rewarding and fun in that way.
John Corbett, too, right? Like, this was pre-Sex and the City.
He was a big deal at that time because of Northern Exposure, was it?
Or North of 16? Or
Northern Exposure. I think it's Northern Exposure.
Yes, yeah.
These are some 90s TV shows that most of my listeners have never heard of, will never hear of, have never watched, will never watch. But yeah, it's interesting just to see the stars and how they've changed in their value and their net weight, whether they've powered up or down over the decades in between. Here's the thing, I love this movie. It's not a smart movie particularly. I think it's kind of like a Cole's Notes approach to history, but they love this bit of history. They're very authentic in their presentation of it for the most part, while still maintaining it being a Hollywood movie. And I have to say, like I had one complaint when I was talking about True Grit, I have one complaint when I talk about Tombstone, and unfortunately, it's the girl.
Dana Delaney's character?
Dana Delaney. Anytime she enters the movie, the energy of the movie just stops. I don't think she's bad in it. I think that she's doing everything the screenplay wants her to do. But the movie is so busy being macho and awesome that whenever she enters the screen, it's like everybody has to stop having fun. Mom's in the room or something like that, Everybody settle down. Now we have to learn something, right? She actually, instead of becoming this sort of romantic motivation that the movie wants her to be, is sort of the stone that's trying to slow down what just wants to be a full-blooded action shoot 'em up with a way too good cast.
Right.
Kurt Russell sort of leads the show, was playing Wyatt Earp, and he seems to be born to play a cowboy. I love his work. I like the actor generally, but I particularly like him playing badasses like Snake Plissken or the Bone Tomahawk. He's a real fucking tough dude in that. And I like him with the big Western beard,
he looks good with that duster of a mustache.
Yeah, he makes it work. Not everybody can pull that shit off, but Kurt Russell, man can pull that shit off. He moves to Tombstone and basically takes over the place because of his
quite
reputation.
Quickly.
He gets a major stake in one of the most popular saloons and is dubbed.
Although not a popular saloon.
Well, he turns it into
it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the great Billy Bob Thornton scene is.
And of course, we're going to have to talk about Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Because he's fucking amazing in this movie.
It's a good marriage of the right kind of screenplay, the right kind of dialogue with an actor and a character. The planets really align.
Doc Holliday's a really interesting, formidable character. Dennis Quaid was playing him in another movie very, very shortly after this, Wyatt Earp. I thought both interpretations were really, really good, really, really strong. But again, Wyatt Earp was being a sprawling, pretentious, wannabe Dances with Wolves sort of epic.
Yes.
And this movie just wants to entertain you. And for that, I like it more than I like
Wyatt Earp. Yeah.
But there's a dividing line. I think he did another movie a few years after this called The Salton Sea.
He did.
Where I could see him really caring. But this is the part where at some point Val Kilmer's passion for acting has just died. Because until like the late 90s, even if he was in a bad movie, he was usually the best part of that bad movie, and then basically from the aughts onward, he just doesn't seem to give a shit.
Yeah,
what's a memorable movie he's done since the
it wasn't Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, kind of a resurgence for him, more so for Downey than for him. But it was like I remember when that came out, and when I did finally see it, I'm like, oh, this is.
All right.
These two are really cooking together. This is good acting. This is good writing. Good movie.
It's probably the best script that he'd been offered in 15 years, so he might have actually given a shit.
Yeah.
But I've seen him in a lot of direct-to-video horror movies and thrillers where he is there for a paycheck, and it's on his face.
Well,
in this movie, he is amazing.
I think he again, this is like secondhand, stories being passed on through friends and peers I've met. But I think there was a point where like his success and his skill, actually even before, I remember someone telling me that lives in New York, just that he got to a point where he started believing the hype.
Right.
And how he carried himself and how he interacted with other people was just as much, if not the main reason why people are like, I don't want to work with that asshole anymore.
He kind of Ed Norton'd himself. You might be one of the greatest living actors in the world, but you're also this huge asshole.
And if nobody wants to work with you...
Yeah. But I think at least Norton softened in that direction, because I know he used to be really stuck up. Like, he wouldn't participate in your movie unless he got a producer and a writer credit.
Right.
He was not just some hired hand. He was a creative component of the movie. And now he's working with Wes Anderson, and I guarantee you he's not calling any shots.
Not
on
an animal, no.
So I think maybe some lessons were learned, but it's unfortunate. Whether he self-destructed or whether his love of acting died, something changed with Val Kilmer. And it's like this movie in particular too, I always look back and what could have been with Val? What could have been with Val?
But so many lines, and then just, we've got them on the table here for reference. I have this copy of it, this DVD director's cut, but then I also got a copy on Blu-ray.
Oh yeah.
So I rewatched it this past time.
Extra pretty.
Yeah, it just if it's any indication of where these rankings might end up landing at the end, this is the only one I own.
Oh really? Well, that might affect the rank. Fun fact or strange fact: George P. Cosmatos, who's the credited director, apparently was maybe going through some shit while he was making this movie. Apparently, the production was troubled. There was days where another director, Kevin Jarre, and apparently, rumor mill, Kurt Russell himself stepped in for director duties on certain days.
Well, I think they stepped in for Kevin Jarre.
Oh, I see.
I think Cosmatos was brought in to replace Kevin Jarre, who was going to write and direct.
Right.
Kevin Jarre actually wrote one of my favorite movies, Glory.
Oh, nice.
And so I don't know what happened on this one, where if it's just
writing
not
a
seeing eye to eye.
Is a different thing than making a movie, and especially with this sprawling a cast, with this much going on. If it's, I don't know if it was his first at bat.
It might have been.
It could have just been overwhelming for him. But anyway, there was some troubles going on behind the scenes, but in true Hollywood fashion, when you watch the movie, you wouldn't know it.
I remember, no, exactly, and I remember this will be quite a few years ago now. I know what it was. Do you remember when that right on the hype of American Idol? Because I was still working as a projectionist at this point. So maybe the first year of American Idol, the second year it happened. Anyways, they got Kelly Clarkson and that Justin dude who was the runner-up.
For the record, you're talking to the wrong guy.
Anyways, they took the winner and the other finalist from the first season of American Idol, and they're like, I know, let's put him in a beach movie.
Okay.
We'll make a movie.
From Justin to Kelly.
Yes,
I know the movie, not the show. That's hilarious.
Which I never saw, but I remember when it came to the movie theater and I had to screen it. And at that time, I remember seeing Roger Ebert, because he was still alive at that point, talking about he said, there's only ever been 2 movies that we've never been given access to review. Before on the release, and the reason why he brought this up because Justin Kelly was one of them, and it had just come out, and so someone asked, "Well, what was the other one?" He said, "Tombstone."
Weird. They were not confident about this.
Yeah,
because
at that point, so I don't know if that ties into all the shit that was happening on set, but they did not let them view it and review it ahead of its release. And I remember him saying in that interview, he was like, "And that's too bad."
I don't remember the numbers of the box office, if it was a particularly huge hit or if it was eaten by the Pet Detective or what. But because that was an absurdly huge hit at the time.
Yeah.
No joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting that they weren't confident about it, because to me, in my mind, it was a big hit. All of the guys at high school seemed to love Tombstone, right? Everyone was on board. And
yeah, I don't recall it being considered a flop. I guess nor was it considered a huge hit at the time, but then again, I came to it a couple of years after its release too, right? So.
We haven't really talked about the plot at all, but I think honestly, it's entertaining just for the amount of faces you're going to see, and it's a standard setup.
It feels like a James Cameron film for a while. Bill Paxton and Michael Bihn's in there, and Stephen Lang.
I love Michael Biehn in this movie. Yeah. Michael Biehn kills it in this movie. Leiter takes control of Tombstone. This gang called themselves the Cowboys, where these red sashes have been causing problems with local businesses and landowners, and have been pillaging and killing without anybody
holding them to it.
So he's going to hold them to it, and it costs him his younger brother. and then it gets personal. And what we have is a series of shootouts, and some of them feel like there's the infamous one where Russell Crowe walks across a creek to execute Powers Booth.
Kurt Russell does.
Oh, what did I say?
You said Russell Crowe. Last movie.
Yeah, last movie. Kurt Russell, yes, goes across the stream to shoot Powers Booth, and just a hail of bullets raining around him, nothing touching him, repeating the word no.
Yeah, that's one of the parts where I'm like, that's kind of where one of the few spots where it falls down for me.
But here's the thing: according to the historical record of that shootout, that's how that shit went down.
Right.
And I kind of like that when you see scenes like that in a movie where it's one of two things. Either it's incredibly lazy screenwriting or it's based on something that actually happened, right? It's weird that we don't give credit to true stories when we see them sometimes. Sometimes weird shit happens.
But what that moment did do for me then, though, is then it sets up a great fucking line from Doc where it's like, well, where's Wyatt? Now walking on water.
Exactly. They don't even believe that he just did that shit.
Yeah.
The movie calls itself on it. And yeah, I think it's more the execution that troubles me. The slow motion no's are what really I don't like. I think the conceit of it is like those guns not really, professionally made, not probably cleaned a lot of panic in the air. It's not easy to deal with the pressure of a gunfight when it's life or death.
We'll come back to that topic in Unforgiven.
In another movie,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But in a way, being the calmest and most collected person in the gunfight is the thing that might get you through it more than being the quickest with your hands.
Yeah.
So I think that it could have been done more credibly, and unfortunately in that particular scene it's not. But the movie is just a series of really good confrontations, occasionally interrupted with some lame girl stuff. And I hate to be that dismissive about the lame girl stuff, but that's how I feel about it.
Well, and rewatching it this time too, having not seen it for a few years now, it actually had, not that it goes super deep, but it actually had this other level that I hadn't really paid much attention to before in terms of them setting up, death as one of the horsemen of the apocalypse. He's going to come on a pale horse and whatever, and just set up all this devil imagery that's actually in the movie all the way through, even in point where during their play, Dana Delaney comes out and they're doing a Dr. Faustus thing with the devil. Like there's this kind of the stuff that's kind of playing underneath. I'm like, oh, that's there the whole time, and I never really gave that a little tip of the hat. It's like, okay, it isn't just like shoot 'em up.
But I think that the shoot 'em up aspect is, or the continual confrontation, even if it's not a shoot 'em up, it'll be a war of words, right?
Yes.
I fucking love the scene with Val Kilmer fleecing all of these gamblers and getting really shitty with them. I know, let's have a spelling contest. But yeah, it's a scene where he's cheating at cards and there's confrontation. Or there's a scene between Billy Bob Thornton, who's the loudmouth bullying people out of the cantina, where Wyatt Earp and he have that confrontation. And of course, there's the famous shootout at the OK Corral. There's just a series of confrontation after confrontation. And that's the engine that the movie runs on. That's when it's exciting. That's when I'm just shoveling the popcorn in and got a big smile on my face. Is it a really, really smart movie? I don't know that it is. I think it's just a Western that loves being a Western and is really good at being a Western, It's higher in my esteem just because it hit me right in that sweet spot right at the right time where I just this movie kicks ass. But I think it is less like an Oscar quote-unquote movie, whatever that means.
Right.
And more a piece of entertainment, which is fine. Give me entertainment. I need to escape all of the terrible realities. So, have fun with Tombstone, and it will work for you. If you fight this movie, you'll win. I think is what I'm saying.
It's like I said earlier on, and I think in the intro there, that it felt like this movie could have been made not only in '93, but if you told me it had come out in '99 or even 2005, I go, yep.
Yeah, the cast might feel a little weirder, but that's the only thing that really calibrates.
And it was fun. I found myself flagging moments of like, isn't that interesting? Like, in terms of just a structure too, the killing of the marshal Fred, when Powers Booth character Curly, whatever, kills him in the street
in the middle of an open.
Yeah, it's like right there. It's like there's your inciting event. 50 minutes into the movie, it's like now things are going to have to shift.
Yeah,
and and then the next kind of big shift is, as you said, when Morgan is then killed. So like, well, you brought him in now, so now we're going to be propelled into the final push of the movie. I was like, God damn! I was like, it's structure-wise, it's actually pretty
clean.
Yeah,
it's pretty clean. But again, not reinventing the wheel at all. I mean, they're not bringing a lot new to the table, right?
No.
It's a pretty classic revenge tale. And again, Wyatt's motivations seem. I mean, he wants to clean up the town to a degree, but it's not.
But it's not him at first, right?
Right.
It's his brothers who are like, we can't sit back and make money off in this town.
He's dragged into it.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting how callous they are about the executing of the cowboys. I see a red sash, I kill the man wearing it. No conversation. Yeah. And, when a guy reaches over what he thinks is an opium pipe and turns out to be
a gun barrel
that ends his life, it's supposedly a ha-ha or almost a heroic moment. And really, that's clearly an act of cowardly murder.
Yes.
But in this movie, we just let it slide.
Oh, but Ike, Stephen Lang's character, Ike, he's the one you love to hate him, and he's the one who, I know they kind of give a little narration bit at the end, so he ultimately
he's that slippery shit.
But he's
never
the one
that gets touched.
Exactly. Son of a bitch.
And there's some truth to that, right? There's always that one guy who seems to get away with it. I always relate to the John C. McGinley character in Platoon.
Yeah.
Who's like a complete cowardly asshole through the whole movie and survives the end fight by hiding under dead bodies and gets a promotion for his show. It's just like that character. But Stephen Lang, you're right, is definitely that in this movie.
Yeah. Some of the things there's Terry O'Quinn, before Lost fame, but then you watch, we're going to talk about it, he's in Young Guns too. It's man, he was doing westerns for a stretch there.
He's been around forever. He just became visible with Lost, it seems.
And the other thing I thought, I'm like, why do I recognize the voice? It's Robert Mitchum, who's
narrating.
He's narrating. I don't know, the narration maybe is actually the thing that maybe bugs me
a little
bit in terms of at least it bookends it, I suppose. But I was like, now we're just kind of getting this little...
That might be the one piece of early 90s thing that creeps into this. I think that the movie didn't trust us to follow the narrative. They kept on feeling the need to catch us up with what was going on.
Yeah.
And I think if it was made today, they would just trust us to figure it out.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
I'm not going to talk shit about Tombstone. I've loved it for too long to change my mind.
Yeah.
I stubbornly enjoy this movie and shall continue to.
Agreed.
My guess is you're calling yourself Mr. William Money.
Say what?
You don't look no meaner than hell, cold-blooded damn killer.
I ain't like that anymore, kid.
$1,000 reward, Will.
Nobody's gonna come.
So you still have that Spencer rifle, huh?
Yeah. He's my partner. He don't go, I don't go.
What's it come to 3 ways?
Just because we're going on this killing, that don't mean I'm gonna go back to being the way I was.
Are you really gonna kill them cowboys?
I do not like assassins or men of low character.
We ain't bad men no more. We're farmers.
You're a lot of savages! A bunch of bloody savages! Assassin!
Oh, I guess they have it coming.
We all have it coming, kid.
Some legends will never be forgotten. Some wrongs can never be forgiven.
Any man don't want to get killed. Better clear on out the back.
Unforgiven.
So I don't have a lot of respect for the Oscars. I just they so consistently seem to have got it wrong for me that I just I don't even understand. Can we hit the reset button or again have an award show that every year we celebrate the best movies starting from the beginning again and we get a do-over now that they've aged, now that we know how the land lays and how they've grown, we can dish out the awards a few decades.
It would be interesting to kind of do something like a 10-year-old award thing, how's it held up over time, or
not because it's the best movie that came out in the last 6 months, but how has it grown, how has it aged? A lot of great movies, a lot of famous movies were box office bombs, but it's hard to fight the decision to give at least, I would say, the best director award to Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven. It also won Best Picture.
Yes.
But basically what Clint Eastwood's done here is destroyed the image that he spent his entire career basically building. And it's not like that he won't go back to doing badass action pictures after this. I believe shortly after this he did In the Line of Fire, which is one of my favorite late-stage Clint Eastwood action movies. But instead of, the man with no name showing up to town to mend all the wrongs and then disappear, show up to a place, change the place, leave. The classic sort of hero's journey.
Yeah, this was an anti-Western, if there ever was one for me.
William Money is a contract killer. He kills people for money. He is a killer of women and children. And that's who he is. He is better at killing people than anybody else. And even, at this over-the-hill stage, as the movie's portraying him, it's funny that this movie is, so old, and they're playing Over the Hill, 25 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It was 91 when it came out.
Yeah.
Or 92, I guess it was.
So what's he playing now? If he was Over the Hill in 92, good God.
This is pre-Space Cowboys.
Exactly.
He's really
where
over
things start to get silly. Well, and that is the other interesting thing of Clint Eastwood, the director. A lot of people think that this was his first movie. And no, he was directing films since the 70s. And he very interesting, diverse films. And he didn't always star in them. Some of them are really...
he had done Bird by this point.
Bird? Yeah. He did this hilarious Charlie Sheen cop movie, The Rookie. Which is just terrible, but also kind of fascinating to watch. And it was obviously before he could do whatever he wanted. He would do such strange things like Space Cowboys, as you mentioned. But I think that like I said, he would do diverse genres. He directed himself in a couple Westerns too. But he had really developed game, and he really focused himself on making the anti-Western. I was sort of talking about the hero destruction themes of 3:10 to Yuma. I think that the entire movie, in a lot of ways, is sort of encapsulated in this one mini scene or mini movie that happens in Unforgiven, where Richard Harris's character shows up to tell the story of all his great feats of, being a badass gunslinger. And Gene Hackman beats the living fuck out of him and sends him away beaten and humiliated, because the heroic ideal of the Western is a fairy tale.
Yeah.
And he's not going to subject himself to hearing it.
And I love that moment when he comes out, Richard Harris's character, when he comes out of the barber shop, when he's first surrounded by the quote-unquote law of the town. And when he has that moment, that realization of oh God,
I am in some serious trouble.
Yeah, and I think it's just a great line under his breath, oh shit.
Yeah.
This person, I know this person knows me. This is not going to fly here. I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble.
I also like that the audience has a character to sort of represent them slyly, from Canadian character actor Saul Rubinek. Mm-hmm. He's originally sort of documenting the history of the Richard Harris character, and sort of stumbles on into Gene Hackman, and then by proxy William Money and his partners. And he's sort of this outsider watching it and hiding behind the piano when the gun's going off, and he's watching this as this terrified outsider, which is sort of how I feel in this movie. It's a Western and everything looks familiar, but the feel is off. The feel is grim. It's raining for most of the second half of this movie. Yes. And I feel cold because of the rain.
And it seems like it's always raining at night.
Yeah.
It clears off during the day.
Dry and hot all day, and then wet and cold all night. So, you have the classic imagery and the classic sort of, I guess, appearance of these archetypes, but they're all given dimension. Gene Hackman has the appearance of an altruistic sheriff, but there's something about him that enjoys the power and the violence that his role is, and he rules with an iron fist.
I love the moment once the writer has now come over to his side.
Yes.
And it's raining at night, and he's a poor carpenter. The house that he's building is leaking or whatever. Yeah. And he just has that one line where you can either shoot or hang the carpenter. I can't remember which one he says. And just that, what'd you say?
Yeah.
He gets really fucking mad, really dark, really quick. Yeah. And it's Yeah, don't piss in this man's cornflakes.
No. But again, he has the appearance of this perfect little idyllic cabin, but it's full of holes.
Yes,
right?
yeah, it literally is. You're absolutely right.
There's depth that you don't see in your typical spaghetti western. One of my favorites that I remember watching with my dad as a kid is Pale Rider.
Right.
Because it has sort of the ghosty sort of aspect to it. Instead of him just being a mysterious man with no name, he might in fact be a vengeful spirit, which, I enjoy. But again, he's sort of playing in a paint-by-numbers, very familiar good and evil place. It's interesting to me how I know money is terrible, much like I knew that the Russell Crowe character in 3:10 was terrible, but my heart went out to money more than it did to Russell Crowe, at least this time, because he's aware that he's damned himself. And, when...
It might be interesting, maybe the Russell Crowe character
is a younger
version of, you know what I mean? You can't fill those ghosts, but in terms
that'd be a really good way to look at 3:10 to Yuma for me, actually. It's sort of the beginning of William Money's journey of realizing that I actually am terrible. I mean, I'm able to survive in this world and even thrive in this world, but I am a force of evil.
Not to tie everything back to 3:10 Yuma, too, but there's also some shades of Evans, of Christian Bale's characters, like his wife, in this particular case, his wife is now deceased, and he's tasked with taking care of his 2 young children, who he obviously had later in life, because he's an older man to begin with. But he doesn't appear to be very good at what he does, or has had a bad string of luck, and so he's in a position where, like, I got to take this goddamn job if I want to have any chance of giving my kids...
He's good at one thing.
Yeah.
He's good at being a bounty hunter. He's good at being a killer. And it's doubly tragic, He kind of corrupts the people around him. His good friend, played by the always dependable Morgan Freeman, he still has a wife. He still has a reason to live. But he still has this romantic idea of the life that he once had. But he's not young and spry. He's not who he was. Yeah. As he finds out through the progress of the movie, he might not even be able to pull the trigger anymore. But being in this bubble of William Money and not being able to pull the trigger is not going to be good for you.
Yeah, as it turns out.
Well, very literally, but just generally. Even the young kid who wants to prove himself to be a badass, but is yet to be given the opportunity. Well, what's his big heroic opportunity?
He shoots a man sitting on the crapper.
Shoots a man in an outhouse, and he makes himself sick over it. The deaths mean something in this movie. It's not like... The Quick and the Dead, another Russell Crowe western, where people just get shot and fall down and that's it, right? No, the guy gets gut shot and he screams and cries and slowly bleeds out. Yeah. And William Money even says, "Look, give the guy some water. I will not shoot you, Jesus."
Give him some
terrible. Yeah. This is terrible. He might even deserve what's happening to him, but this is terrible.
There's the moments I marked down too, in terms of even looking at it from a structure standpoint, like being a movie that's around 2 hours long, right? Like it's like an hour and 9 minutes before they even arrive in Big Whiskey in the town. Like it takes them that long in terms of the word of the bounty for these 2 guys for what they did to the women.
Yeah. That the instigating factor, I guess we didn't mention it. A prostitute is viciously assaulted, slashed across her face repeatedly.
Multiple times, yeah.
And the punishment that Gene Hackman gives out is not enough for this brothel.
No, come back in the spring and give him some of your horses as
payback. Yeah.
And not even to the women.
Not to the women.
To the owner of the establishment.
Yeah. So they're furious and they get some money together and they hire William Money to kill these men. And we don't like these men. Like, William Money he's still a bad guy, but the people he's killing are also bad people.
Yeah.
The weird wild card is, again, Gene Hackman. Remember when Gene Hackman was still around? I miss Gene Hackman. Apparently fame drove him crazy as well, apparently. The later into his career, the more difficult he became to work with. But what an amazing actor. And, you cast this wrong and there's no depth to that character. Because I think in order for this to work, we have to still kind of like him a little bit.
Yep.
Even though he does some terrible things and the movie is telling us he's the villain, like... It's got to hurt a little bit. Unforgiven's not worried about hurting you. It's not just another mindless Clint Eastwood shoot 'em up. It's way deeper than that.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the scene. I think it gets quoted a lot because it is. It's after they've kind of killed the second perpetrator, if you will, of the assault, when the young kid shoots him in the outhouse, and they're waiting for their money to arrive. And I guess it's before they know that Morgan Freeman's character has been taken and actually killed by that point. But they have that great scene between him and the kid. Anyway, he has that great line, like, it's a hell of a thing killing a man.
Yeah.
And then I think the other one, it's like two of the best lines in the whole movie are in that scene, that we all have it coming.
We all got it coming,
Yeah.
kid. That's
Yeah.
what I always
Yeah.
think about when...
Yeah.
And
So he had it coming, well, we've all got it
so
coming.
Me too. If I get killed on an outhouse someday, it's probably just as done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The great and amazing thing to me, moving to the climactic shootout, which is like... Well, barroom shootouts happen in so many westerns, it's like almost ubiquitous. But this really does feel like the barroom shootout to me, right? One guy, a room full of bad guys. He kills all the bad guys. The innocents scamper away, and you believe it credibly.
Well, I think what's so great about it is his first order of business. Who owns this place?
Yeah, exactly.
I do. Boom. And that sets the tone for the rest. They go, oh Christ.
If he was going to decorate his establishment with my friend, he should have armed himself. That's on him.
Yeah.
No, but like this, it's not a righteous thing that he's doing, but now it's personal. It's sort of the now it's personal moment, you know. He wasn't happy about any of this, and he kind of dragged his friend, although you got the feeling like Morgan Freeman's character was fairly easily seduced to
go on
come
the
back.
trip,
But he did not want this to end that way. That was one of the few people that has been a friend for a long time that he could actually, you know somebody, and hell was coming to be paid.
Yeah.
And I talked earlier in one of the reviews about how it's usually the calmest person in the room, not the fastest person in the room.
That's a great, I think I wrote that down too. Was it on this one?
He's absolutely stoic. As
he
walks.
A man who keeps his head. That was the one quote I wrote down.
He's absolutely
Gene Hackman
stoic.
says the line.
Yeah, he walks into that room. He sees all of those men. He doesn't even know how many of them are armed. But it's hilarious because they're actually talking about this. They're about to set out in the morning to go hunt him. Right?
Yeah, and he just walks in.
Army of men. And he, like you say, kills that unarmed guy outright and tells Gene Hackman he's here to kill him, and by implication, anybody who's going to stand in his way. Yeah. And he proceeds to do exactly that. Yeah. And like describing it, you'd see like, how did they pull it? Like how? He doesn't do anything to dodge bullets or anything like that. He's not some ninja diving behind the bar. He just, when the rifle is empty, he moves to the pistols, and when the pistols are empty, the room is empty.
What I love about that messy fight too, right, is like, because Gene Hackman, he is the one that sets up in his interview scene earlier, where he says it's not usually the best shot or the fastest shot, it's whoever keeps their head.
Yeah.
Is going to come out alive. And I love the fact that, he goes to shoot him and it misfires. But he just throws the fucking gun at him so he can get the next, like, it's not this great, like, walking on water moment. Shooting
it's not heroic either, right? Like, now you're distracted by the gun, so I can gut shoot you, and he does gut shoot him so that he can say some spiteful words before he executes him, right? Like, it's all terrifyingly deliberate, and the way he goes to the bar and starts drinking the alcohol, like he'd been fighting it and fighting it and fighting it and fighting it, and no, I am a killer. I cannot pretend to be something that I am not.
What was really cool about watching this one again, because it had been ages since I'd seen it.
It's aged well, I think, too.
Was like, I knew it was shot in Canada because a friend of mine from high school, Matt Anderson was his name. I remember him saying the kid that plays Clint Eastwood's son.
Okay.
He's like, I know him. Like, he was like in something like soccer camp with me, and we were pen pals. So that's how I remember making the connection of like, oh, it was made in Canada at that point. So watching it again this time, I did a tweet on social media about it, and Lisa Repo Martel, who is a Canadian actor who I know, like, we're friends on Facebook. I was in a play directed by her husband. All of a sudden, she pops up as one of the young women. I'm like, oh my God, like, what the hell? Like, one of my friends was in the Best Picture.
Well, I know I grew up in and around Edmonton. One of the men that my mom was working with at the time at some insurance company, which I can't remember the name of, would do like stage work from time to time, and he has a one-line role on the train. Someone's about to talk shit to Richard Harris, and
Right.
he sort of says,
no, don't.
do that.
That's probably so and so.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's all he had to do in the movie, but still, like you say, one line in fucking Unforgiven, I'll take it. I will take it. It is not the fun Western, is what I would... It's not really caution. I just want people to go in with open eyes, right?
Yeah.
This is not the movie that's like Tombstone was, where it's like fun and epic. This is, like I said, closer to No Country for Old Men territory. It's grim, it's dark, it's like the antithesis of what Clint Eastwood built his career on, which is why it was so perfect in a way that he put it to an end.
And speaking to what you said earlier, talking about the Robert Mitchum narration, bookending Tombstone, that was the one thing that I didn't particularly like as much on Unforgiven, is those kind of scrolling narration at the beginning, at the end. I was just like, didn't need it.
Don't need it.
I think there's enough stuff that comes up in the dialogue that his wife is dead and whatnot that we don't need to...
And again, I wonder if it came out today, if those titles would be there. It seems like the deeper we get into like the progression of cinema, the more the audience is respected, which is why movies are getting better.
Yeah, I think you're right. 'Cause there was just something about the font that was used, like that was what dated it.
Yeah.
For me, it made it even seem older than Robert Mitchum doing a voice for Tombstone. Is this kind of scrolling narration in this font that made it seem way older than Tombstone than it really is, because it's only a few years that actually separates them.
92.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Unforgiven, I invite you to give it a watch.
Can't go north because Murphy's got men coming out of Fort Sumner. He can't go south because he's got Brady coming in. East is no good because he's got John Kinney coming up now.
Let's dance.
Regulators! Let's settle up!
Those are just boys. Ain't one of them over 21.
We're gonna have a lot of fun now.
All I see are hired thieves.
Get off my property.
You were supposed to serve 11 warrants and expose the ring. Instead, you went out on a rampage.
Get ready for hell.
Law don't talk like that. Objection, Your Honor.
The governor's revoked your deputization powers. You're now wanted by the legitimate law as well as those outside the law. You're being hunted by troops.
Bonnie is believed to be the captain of a deputized gang.
Billy the Kid, huh?
The governor's put a $200 bounty on your head.
Ain't easy having pals.
So, full disclosure, not a big Emilio Estevez fan. It's not that he's even terrible. The first time I ever saw a movie, and this was at a young age, where I sort of understood the concept of like vanity project, it was this movie Wisdom, that he wrote and directed at a very young age in the 80s, about this guy who robs banks to stick it to the man, and he's sleeping with Demi Moore, and he has this... It's the most pretentious, cheesy... Like, at 12 years old, I was like, what the fuck, right? It's probably didn't even make the leap from VHS to DVD, right?
Because no one wanted to do the transfer.
Yeah, like, look it up on IMDb if you want, but...
I intrigued.
I remember being miscued by that. I even at a young age, I saw through that movie. And then I always thought he was the weakest link in the Breakfast Club. But it kind of makes sense, because if that's a movie, a sort of an expression of all the people in high school, that would be the guy that I would have liked the least in high school. Like, I didn't relate to his character at all.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's also the son of Martin Sheen. He grew up in Hollywood. He got to be an actor because he wanted to be an actor. He got to be a director because he wanted to be a director. And it's not that his acting is that bad or that his directing is that bad. It's just that he's taking out somebody else's seat, as far as I'm concerned. You know, I remember at a young age, some kid saying, you know, oh, the Mighty Ducks is fun, and I'm just watching the Mighty Ducks, and it just doing fucking nothing for me. And it, for some reason, it was, the only thing I liked about the first Mission Impossible was the death of Emilio Estevez.
That's awesome.
So here's the thing.
Despite that,
I think he's fucking awesome in this movie. In some way, in some ways, he's weirdly perfect as Billy the Kid, with this giddy, sort of over the top thing that he's doing. A lot of people like sort of dismiss Young Guns, saying like, "Well, yeah, it's the Brat Pat from the '80s playing cowboy." And yes, I will concede that point. But they actually kind of look more like cowboys do. If you see the few pictures taken of the age, you were kind of an adult person by the time you were a teenager, right? And, when you're leading a herd of cattle across the country, you might be 20, 22 years old, right? So the gristled Clint Eastwood look is probably less authentic than the baby-faced kid look, right?
Right.
That's kind of what more cowboys would look like.
What I love in the movie, too, is they have that bit where they're showing him posing for a picture. And it actually is, they're recreating one of the few pictures of Billy the Kid. Yeah.
And if you can't get past, the presence of Charlie Sheen, Lou Diamond Phillips, and Emilio Estevez, they fill out the backdrop with, like, Terrence Stamp and Jack fucking Palance. Oh, I do love Jack Palance. There's no actor who delivers dialogue.
This is pre-Batman and pre-City Slickers and pre-one-arm push-ups. This is classic Jack Palance.
He is such a specific actor. He must have been like the Christopher Walken of his time. Like, there's something so specifically Jack Palance, unmistakable Jack Palance. But you're right. I think this led into Batman, which led into him getting a sort of repopularized in his later career. But he's hilarious and he's over the top, and I love it. And that's kind of how I feel about the movie. It's hilarious and over the top, and I like it in spite of itself, It's got a lot more harder edges than you'd expect, I think, for the Brat Pack playing cowboys and Indians, But the background players, the shootouts, and the surprising level of stakes that they managed to take out of the scenario won me over. Now, the trick is it's in with a bunch of really, really good movies. And I can work defense for Young Guns and can say that it worked for me, but when it comes down to it, am I going to be enthusiastic about recommending Young Guns to a lot of people? No, I think if you're about my age and you saw it at that time in your youth, it's this sort of nostalgic package that you can sort of go back to.
I remember renting it from the video store and watching it on the VCR, and that was my introduction to this movie.
That final cabin shootout I remember watching over and over again. I would rewind it and watch it again. Right. So it's not subtle, it's not smart, but it is fun.
Yeah, and I think too, especially the intro, the whole bit of Billy being introduced to the regulators and what, the whole first part of the movie doesn't feel like a stretch. It doesn't feel like it's, the music dates it. I think, we were talking about that earlier, maybe even off mic before we started. But in terms of images, it isn't really until, they start doing the hallucination sequence and some of the things like that where you're like, okay, this is some dated filmmaking apart from the music, right? But I remember too, checking on it after, they're pretty accurate in terms of historical record. I think the one thing I remember seeing, that house burning did happen. Mm-hmm. They did escape, although is it Charlie? Is that the one?
Casey Siemaszki.
Yeah. Charlie, he did not die in that shootout. He lived and died a few years later. Apart, it's no, they really were building on things.
They were more authentic than they needed to be, given, again, like I said, Brad Pack playing Western.
Yeah.
For sure. I think that there's a turning point in the movie. There's an initial sort of charming point to the movie where it's they're young, they're being sort of pushed gently in a nicer direction by Terrence Stamp, but this isn't going to last long. Even when their savior figure does get killed, the movie still has this sort of feeling of it's like a fun adventure story that we're going to see. But there's a scene involving Charlie Sheen, which I think changes the tone of the movie drastically. First of all, it's Charlie Sheen, so we're expecting him to have more of a role to play in the movie. And secondly, there's this old, harmless-looking drunk, and he kills the Charlie Sheen character, shoots him through the heart. There's no speech that he's given. There's no
And I remember thinking wait, but is the other guy dead in the outhouse? We never get that answer.
You assume it, but you don't know it. They don't give you that. But all of a sudden, that's shocking, and there's real stakes to it. And they don't give him that movie moment where he says something right before he goes out there, which tells you he's going to die, or that he bleeds out slowly and apologizes for being no.
It's like, oh Christ, one of the guys who we thought was going to probably be right to the end of this thing is dead at, what did I wrote down? Yeah, 49 minutes in.
And I do think that's when the movie goes from being sort of a fun, rollicking Western adventure to a movie that has actually some decent stakes to it. All of a sudden, it's not just them having fun. But I gotta, I will say nice things about Emilio because this is the movie that I can. There's something about the crazy energy that he has, that weird cackle that he has, even while he's shooting the gun, that you're like, he's motivated in this. Like, he has a reason to be doing the violence he's doing, but his real flaw might be how much he's enjoying it.
Yes. what I did enjoy about the movie and that character in particular, because it really is like the centerpiece, right, and how everyone else relates to Billy the Kid, that obviously I would not have had the insight at age 12 or 13 when I saw it the first time, is that, Charlie Sheen's character Dick, he really is sending like the lamb to the slaughter in that first bit. It's like, well, you go check it out, because he doesn't want to do it himself, so we'll just send this cocky little kid.
Well, and he has to prove that he's as badass as Billy the Kid,
and so he walks in and he kills the guy while he's taking a leak in the bathroom and it just sets off this huge gunfight that they come out of. And what that kind of sets the tone for is like, they are in the mess that they are in large part because of Billy the Kid, but the only reason that they're able to come out of said mess is because they're with Billy the Kid.
And there's that, I think that it starts with the Charlie Sheen character, but it kind of gets picked up with the Kiefer Sutherland character.
Yeah, Doc.
They're constantly wagging their finger saying, Billy, what you're doing is wrong. You're going to get us killed. What you're doing is wrong. But on some level, they kind of want to be Billy the Kid.
Yeah.
It's as much about you're going to get us killed, or is like, no, I want to be the guy who's calling the shots, Yeah. They're young, dumb, and, want to fucking kick ass. And they want to think of it as their gang, They kind of get seduced by this idea of being outlaws, and the second Young Guns movie sort of deals with the consequences. That's the kind of good and bad thing about Young Guns too. Although not the entire gang obviously makes it out alive. In this story, it basically gives you the origin of Billy the Kid, and you could tell yourself, and he rode off to have many more adventures, right? And there were no true consequences. Well, no, of course. And to their credit, they did make a sequel, which I don't enjoy as much as this one, but that does deal with that. Yes, this path only ends badly. It only leads to bad places. It's way better than you would think it would be. Like, I could see somebody who hadn't grown up with it like we did looking at that and saying, that looks hilarious. Like, there's got to be something more interesting to watch tonight than Young Guns.
There was another thing I wrote down too. The slow-mo of him popping out of the trunk after being thrown out of a window. I'm like, I don't know if that's historically accurate.
How did you open and close the trunk? Was it, again, don't think about it.
Yeah, part of me went, ugh, okay. But there was a really nice tip of the hat moment, too, of when Pat Garrett warns him, which they kind of potentially set up as maybe he was setting a trap.
Right.
Which, anyways, that's one of the thoughts that crosses their mind. And it's not William Peterson at this point. William Peterson plays him in the sequel.
In the sequel, yeah.
But he has a moment, Billy the Kid does, where he has his back. They're at night, he has his back turned to him. And it's like, are you my friend? He's, yeah, I'm your friend. And it's like this moment of, are you going to shoot me right now? It kind of plays into the story of where he did shoot him at night, apparently, right? So on and so forth.
Yeah, well, it's not hero to shoot him in the back. Maybe he's shooting at a reflection. There's all this bullshit, who knows? Nobody was really there. It's fun. Fun fact, I talked to you about this before we started recording, but Blink and You Miss It cameo from Tom Cruise. One of the first people killed in the big house shootout at the end is Tom Cruise. He's got a big cowboy hat and facial hair. It's really hard to tell it's him, but apparently he and Emilio they would have been doing friends. Yeah. They've been buds for a while, and he was just on set, and they're like, we're doing a shootout. And I was like, oh, well.
I want to be in that.
I want to be in that. So uncredited, it's one of those things, but it is, that happened. Tom Cruise was on set for that day. And yes, as not credible as it is they light the house on fire to get these guys out of there. Them throwing the suitcases out of the window, and they're hiding inside trunks, like, that is not credible. But to me, that's not what I find hilarious about that shootout. It's how painfully they project the death of the Charlie character,
Yes.
the Casey Siemaszko character.
Yeah.
He literally gets married the night before and is told not to come with them, but no, he's gonna go anyway. It's just like,
this is not gonna end well for you.
Just put your gun in your mouth. Like, good God, there's no surprise to his fate. And I also liked we didn't mention Dermot. Is it Dermot?
Yeah, Dermot Mulroney. Yeah.
He's kind of the most cowboy of them in that he looks physically the grossest. Like
chewing tobacco.
Yeah. There's some, like Emilio and Kiefer Sutherland always still look pretty somehow in this dirty world. But he was usually the guy who said the inappropriate thing at the inappropriate time that would make you roll his eyes. And yet, when he went down, you were kind of like,
oh. Yeah.
So I think he accomplished something there. He was the gross guy, but we liked him.
Liked him no matter what.
Yeah, it's an is what it is movie. I will play limited defense to Young Guns. It's in a crowd of much, much better movies, and it's fine for the time it came out in. It's hard to get super enthusiastic about it, but I'm not on the hate train, not at all.
Great piece of nostalgia.
So there it was. We have just talked about 6 modern westerns, let's call them. That's a probably fair statement. I think that I have the feeling like we're going to agree on the bottom, but the list seems largely up in the air.
Yeah.
I suspect we're not going to match, but I have my own biases and prejudices that I bring into this. So don't take it personally, but if we don't match, but
I think we probably won't, but I think you're probably in a similar boat that you don't dislike any of them. And even though there's one that's clearly kind of outclassed, it's not that it's a bad.
Yeah, I really like 5 of the 6 movies, and I guilty pleasure like 1 of the 6 movies.
Yeah.
But like, it's really close. It's tough. Like, it's a lot of the times like the top 3 are difficult. In this case, the top 5 were difficult.
I would agree.
So, in those cases, it's usually rarely a match. But I doubt we're gonna fight over it. But let's find out.
Okay.
What was your least favorite of these 6 movies and why?
Young Gun.
What?
it just can't hold. Hey, I love seeing Terry O'Quinn in movies before I knew who he was, and it's not on the same level filmmaking wise. Maybe it feels more dated than the other ones, even though it's only like 4 years before Unforgiven. But it feels older.
Quick aside, if you like Terry O'Quinn, a fan of all things horror, he did 2 Stepfather movies in the 80s, The Stepfather and The Stepfather 2. I don't think he did the third one. I think it was different anyway. Really low budget, really low fi movies, but Terry O'Quinn plays the crazy stepfather, and I think he's really amusing to watch. So
he's a good actor, man.
He
was good before Lost.
Young Guns at the bottom. I don't think you're going to hear me fighting you too hard on that.
But yeah, then that's when it kind of got tough, because there's like things are like, well, they're really good filmmakers, they're really good film, but then should I just run through all the way?
Do you, man.
Okay, so yeah, Young Gun at 6, and then I put True Grit at 5. Django, I thought it might have landed higher, but then I put it at 4. Unforgiven at 3. 3:10 to Yuma. I love that movie at 2. And then Tombstone, maybe it's part guilty pleasure, but the dialogue I eat it up with a spoon. Like I can quote it, and as I was rewatching it for the first time in years, I knew exactly what the next line was going to be. It is a really well written screenplay, despite some of its cheesy moments later on in the film. So I have Tombstone at 1.
We have shockingly different lists.
I'm not surprised by that, no.
But again, I don't think we're going to fight a lot about it. I mean, I don't think you're going to like where Tombstone is in my list.
It's probably 5.
But I like I said, I do have a lot of affection for all of them. At the bottom, unsurprisingly, Young Guns. I think if you're the audience for the movie, you know that you're the audience for this movie. If you're thinking, I'm not sure, you're probably not the audience for this movie. It's one of these things that could only happen in 1988. All of these actors were super, super hot at the time. So putting them all in one movie by itself would make it a big deal, but they decided to play Western, right?
Yep.
It's a time capsule, is what it is movie. So let it be that. But it's got wiped off the board by its competition. I'm terribly sorry, but you are correct. I did put Tombstone in 5th place. I love Tombstone, but it's not a smart movie. It's an entertaining movie. It just doesn't have the depth that some of the other ones did for me. But it was a near thing. Like, I almost put Believe It or Not, and this is probably low for you too, 310 for Yuma in it.
Yeah.
The thing, in a way, I liked it more and less when I revisited it, because it became a less fun shoot-'em-up Western movie than it became this kind of provocative antecedent of saying, like, the hero mythos is not just wrong, it's kind of, like, stupid.
Yes.
Like, it's deeply flawed. I don't think you can live in this world. And I don't know. It's a great movie, but the darkness kind of took a little bit of the fun out of it for me, because I don't know. I somehow the first time I was just like all engaged with the shootouts and the stagecoach and the surprisingly dark performance from Luke Wilson. Like I said, all the little components kind of distracted me from the overarching darkness that was there. But again, in a list that also includes Unforgiven, can I be that? Yeah. So there it is. Speaking of Unforgiven, all the way in 3rd place is Unforgiven.
We agree on that.
There we go. We did agree on that. And again, it's a Best Picture winner, but the darkness and ugliness of the movie, although, like, I'm sure I'll watch it again, it's like something you maybe watch every 10 years or so, right? Like, it's kind of a bitter pill, and that might hurt its rewatchability.
It's a bit of a time capsule for me, too, maybe related more specifically to Clint Eastwood than maybe the genre as a whole, but yes.
But I respect a man willing to tear down something that he himself helped build.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of these movies that'll stick around. People will be talking about Unforgiven for a while.
Yep.
Now it's just going to become predictable Larry bullshit. Number 2, Django Unchained. The movie surprises me. Like, I didn't see it being this funny and, like, lively and energetic and, like, blockbuster style entertaining. I was kind of expecting it to be a grim slog in some ways. Like, I thought there was going to be some real harshness and darkness. Not that it doesn't have its corners, but mainly it really wants to entertain you, and it holds its length really well. Like, sometimes I want to admonish Quentin Tarantino
for so long,
his
running
movies
times
usually run so long, but they usually sustain. They have somehow keep the energy of a 90-minute movie over a 3-hour movie. I don't know how he does it. Some film class studies might be able to figure it out.
Maybe it's in the way he cuts the film. I think that it's got to be something like that.
And you also think, like, how much fat he trims off of it. Like, what was the first cut of Django Unchained? 4 hours and change, right? But, like, there's something to be said for a movie that surprises me. And even though I was expecting to be intrigued and to like a Quentin Tarantino movie, I was surprised at how much I like Django.
Yep.
I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about the Coen brothers and how, like, I'm ridiculously on board for them. And this has everything I love about Westerns and everything I love about the Coen brothers in one package. And even though that the movie is full of stars, Haley Steinfeld as this Maddie, this main character, is so amazing and charming and, like, in a way, the most powerful figure in the movie. And the fact that it works at all is, in spite over and above how well it works, the fact that it works at all is amazing, but it works amazingly well for me. And it's the Coen brothers, so it was hard for me not to rank it high on the lists. But again, the top 5 was soup for me. Like
Yeah.
it was.
I
love those
enjoyed them all.
movies, and they're very different. I think what Unforgiven is trying to do is so different from what Tombstone is trying to do, but they're both incredibly successful at doing what
they're set out to do.
So,
even to talking about True Grit and her performance too. Like I think my favorite scenes of hers are the ones where she walks into like that general store and she's like bartering with what her compensation and then like selling back. Like the dialogue and the back and forth in those scenes are fantastic.
And you just it's unmistakably Coen universe. If you want to sleep in one of the coffins, that'll be all right. I don't think she was thinking about that.
That wasn't going to entertain that idea.
That was not crossing her mind, dude. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry you're not a champion, but I'm so grateful for you coming.
It's a great excuse to drink coffee and talk movies with you, my friend, anytime.
It's not hard work, I know, but I appreciate it. Is there anything you want to say to the kids on the internet before I press stop on this?
Keep tuning in.
Keep doing it. Thank you, dude. And there it was. Another edition of Ranknreview has hit the rear view mirror. I hope you enjoyed that exploration of some modern westerns, and I hope you have some feedback for me. You can send that to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's RANKNREVIEW@gmail.com. Check out the website at ranknreview.ca because I am a Canadian. Nobody's perfect, you guys. And if you like Ranknreview, my guess is that you will also enjoy the Terror Table podcast. So check out the Terror Table podcast wherever fine podcasts are found. Keep your ear to the ground for my motion picture Book of Trespasses. Hopefully someday we're going to find a way to get it out to you guys. I will definitely keep you posted. And thank you so much, as usual, for listening to Ranknreview. Your ears make you my friend. If you listen to the show, you're my friend.